Tony Tonozzi's mother and father met in the coal fields of Illinois in 1904. They had both immigrated from Italy. They moved west in 1908 to Colorado for better air when one of their daughters was taken sick with asthma. What they didn't realize is they were moving into the heart of what would become the Dust Bowl. Here Tony talks about those early days in the plains of Colorado. So where were you born?
In Bristol, Colorado, 1920.
What are your early memories of the farm?
Well, following the horses around on the farm, we had an old Italian that moved in with us, and he would let me come along with him, and I'd follow behind the harrow and the plows and so on. They started us working about on the stacker team for putting up hay at about 5 years old.
Wow. You were 5 and you were stacking hay?
Well, I'd driving the team up and then pull them back and pull the hay up to stack it, But, I felt part of it,
Definitely.
Yeah.
You said your brother said you almost starved out there. Was it pretty tough?
Yeah, it was pretty tough on the farm there, and they just moved there from Illinois, and they had a hard time getting started, and they didn't have much funds, but then after they moved, they started coming around. During World War I, they started doing good on the farm.
What are your early memories of the farm?
I suppose being a kind of a industrious family, and really everybody was working hard, and we had cows and horses and pigs and some sheep, not too many sheep. We'd drive the cows to the pasture every morning and go get them every night. Milk at 5 o'clock in the morning. My next oldest brother, we piled around quite a bit together. We had a lot of fun on horses and going down the Arkansas River and getting spooked.
Tell me about that. Tell me about riding horses on the Arkansas.
Well, we would go camping down there. We'd hitch old Lena up to the buggy and throw stuff in the buggy and go down to some old deserted houses and stay in these deserted houses. We thought it was camping, We'd get scared about midnight and leave and come back home again.
So it was just you kids?
Yeah, and some of the neighbor kids too, yeah.
You start hearing ghosts in the middle of the night?
Well, yeah. Dang pigeons up in the attic were fluttering around, and we didn't know what to think. And, when we're mowing hay, we'd have probably 4 teams of horses and 4 mowing machines right behind each other, and they'd let me drive one of them and be in the back so if something happened to the horses.
And how old were you?
Probably about 10 then.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So you like to work?
Oh, yes. It was good for me. Kept me out of trouble,
Talk about your dad and mom. What were they like?
Well, Dad did good carpentering, but during the Depression, went way down, and we went through the Dust Bowl too down there. It was vicious, and so I think he kind of had black lung disease from the coal mines in Illinois there, and when we got when the dust started coming around, his lungs kind of went bad, so he wasn't be able to work very hard, and he finally went to to California with a daughter, and he lived quite a while after that, but his lungs were never too good.
Tell me about the flood that came.
Oh, we lived on kind of a flat area in southeastern Colorado. The storm came up, and Dad was out in the yard, horse yard, and he saw this coming, kind of white sheet of, this was hail that was coming, and he turned the horses out of the corral, and the flood had already hit us, and he couldn't get back to the house, which was about 200 feet away, because the water was about 3 feet deep, and it had a 6 to 8 inch of hail floating on top of it. So he climbed a tree and stayed there from about 4 o'clock in the afternoon till 10 o'clock at night. He said, but I had a little mouse in the tree that was my friend. But in the morning, it washed out our whole basement. where all the hams and the wine was and everything, and washed our bees away, killed some of our cows.
What did you do that year?
Well, the Red Cross come in there, but Dad was too proud to go to Bristol to get anything from the Red Cross, so he sent me with a wagon to get hams and grain for the chickens we had left. He had some money hid down in the basement in his coffee can. And maybe a month later, he found that coffee can out in the field. And he didn't tell Mom he had this money. But she then found out about it. But the flood washed out a lot of bridges, and he got a job building a lot of the bridges. So he was making 75 cents an hour doing carpenter work, and it did a lot of damage to the crops. But we made out.
How old were you then when that flood came through?
Probably about 14 there, 1934 or 35.
What are your memories of the Dust Bowl days?
Well, boy, those black clouds coming up over there, the chickens would go to sleep, and then we'd get in the house and start putting wet newspaper over the windowsill so it couldn't filter in. When we'd go to sleep at night, we'd put wet rags over our face to breathe through. We'd tear up sheets and stuff like that, and we'd line the windowsills and along the doors underneath with wet rags and wet newspaper.
Would it get in your food?
Oh, it would, but if the food was tasty, you didn't even pay attention to it. You could wipe your finger across the table, even in the house in the morning, and see your fingerprints. And even with the washcloths over there, you'd blow your nose and it would be black. We had a cistern there, so we didn't have much water, but we were under an irrigation ditch there, but during the drought there was no water in that. It was because they were plowing all those dry lands up, putting them into wheat, and they did good, but then it left it all ready to blow,
Right. How did your family grow a garden and keep everything together during that Dust Bowl time?
We had a well at this one place, and we sold water. It was a deep water well, and that was part of the place we moved to. And we had some water for irrigation, and if we'd get water in the Amity ditch, they'd run it down there, and we were able to grow a garden. A lot of tomatoes and peppers and
so
a lot of canning.
Even though everything was going to dust around you, you were able to...
Yeah, we had to keep that going. We could use some water from the well in irrigation, but it was awful dry. But the crops didn't flourish at all, The dust storms were really bad there, and you couldn't see where the road was to come home, because the fences were all covered up with dust and tumbleweeds, So our Gus was kind of looking out the window and to tell the driver where to go down the road, And he opened the window, stuck his head off, and a horse's head lips were right up. Gets in there. I never seen Gus so scared in his life. He thought he'd gone into spook house or something. The horse was kissing him, I guess. The horse was lost too.
That was in the middle of all this dust.
Dust storms, yeah.
So was that a scary time for you?
Yeah, it was. And finally, it didn't even get better until probably around 38, 39 when we started getting some rains in through there and getting water in irrigation and so on. And then we got a grasshopper plague down through there for 2 years. We'd have a big trough about 15 feet long. We'd hook on a skid. We'd hook a horse on each end of that and put water in there with kerosene, and we'd go through the fields, and it had a curtain in the back, and the grasshoppers would jump into the curtain and then fall down into this kerosene for water. We'd get enough grasshoppers to put them in a ditch, and then we'd set it on fire. They even gave us kind of a wheat meal, a poison for grasshoppers, and we'd scatter that around. But that lasted for 2 years. But
how did you keep them from eating your garden?
They'd got in there, yeah, and we scattered this wheat meal around, and They'd eat that, and it was kind of a sweet thing. It kind of had a banana smell to it. They really went for that.
That really killed them?
Yeah, you'd see them laying all over.
What about the birds? Did the birds eat the...
Yeah, probably. You know, you didn't even think about that though.
Yeah.
But they could have probably eaten that, and I don't know whether it affected them or not.
So what were those 2 years like? You were hard pressed to raise food then, right?
Yeah, hard pressed to raise food, and but I don't think we're always thinking about when Roosevelt got in. He started the works projects, and my brother went to work as a timekeeper for a WPA project, and he made some money. Dad got to work on a school that they built a school with government fund. We got on a lot of that stuff. My brother Emo worked with a team of horses, building overpasses for railroads, building bridges and so on. So that's what kind of saved us during the 30s. And you couldn't get over $30 a month under the program, but that was a lot of money then, Walt.
So $30 a month was a pretty good wage?
Well, yeah, with a team of horses. They'd build overpasses for railroads and roads.
Growing up in the hard times in the Dust Bowl days, how did that influence your life as a father and a husband?
Well, probably chintzy as hell. Don't waste anything, The kids know this. Are you sure this moldy thing is okay?
So you always...
Yeah, everything was used. Yeah, everything was, fixed at the house. Hams, sausages, a beef and a pig, and raised our own chickens, honeybees, and favorite thing was to smell those hams curing down the basement, the cellar. He made wine every fall. They could get together some of the Italians and see if they could get enough money together to have them ship in a ton of grapes. And so he would make the wine, and first wine was the best wine. The second wine was pretty good. Then he'd have to add a lot of sugar to the third wine to make it ferment. And you could tell by which one of his friends were good friends. He'd give them the third wine if they weren't very good friends.
So the first wine was the first press, right?
Yeah.
The second wine was you pressed the same grapes.
Same grapes again, yeah, and let it ferment again.
So by the time the third came around,
it was pretty meager. It had alcohol in it, but not very good taste. Repple. Pig hocks, we made our own lard. Cut the lard and put it in a big trough, and then squeezed it out in a flour sack, and then we had probably 5-10 gallons of lard to cook with. All, my cholesterol. I should have died a long time ago, Walt. But we cooked with that all the time. I'm almost too much that way sometimes. Too chintzy.
Well, it leaves you worried about not having enough. Though,
well,
that
the Depression days kind of left a impression on you that you didn't want to waste anything.
That was Tony Tonozzi remembering life on the plains in the 20s and 30s.